My family dumped and abused me when they thought I wasn't dad's son by mistake. Reddit stories. I never imagined that a simple paternity test could tear apart my family. It all happened so fast, and before I knew it, I was standing alone, wondering how things had spiraled out of control. Looking back now, I can barely recognize the life I had before everything fell apart. I want to share this story because it's hard to believe that something as small as a piece of paper could carry so much weight and cause so much pain. Everything started when my partner, Sarah, came to me one evening and said she had been feeling anxious about something. At first, I thought it was the usual stresses of life, maybe something to do with work or our new baby. But then she said something that completely caught me off guard. "I've been thinking, what if we took the paternity test? Just to be sure," she said. My heart sank. I didn't know how to respond at that moment. We had been together for years, and we had just had a baby who was only a few months old. We had a strong relationship, or so I thought. The idea that she could doubt whether our child was mine had never crossed my mind. I tried to play it off. "What do you mean, to be sure? We know the baby's mine," I said, laughing awkwardly, hoping she would say it was just a passing thought. But she didn't laugh. Instead, she looked at me seriously, and I realized that this wasn't just something that had popped into her head. It was something she had been thinking about for a while. "I don't know," she said, hesitating. "It's not that I don't trust you. It's just, there's always that tiny, nagging doubt, you know? I just think it would give me peace of mind, for both of us." At that moment, I felt hurt, confused, and a little angry. Did she really think there was a chance that our baby wasn't mine? I couldn't understand where this was coming from. There had never been any doubt in my mind about Sarah's faithfulness, and I didn't think she had any reason to doubt me either. I wanted to tell her no, that we didn't need a test, that this was all ridiculous. But then I saw the worry in her eyes, and I realized this wasn't just about trust. It was about her needing some reassurance. So, against my better judgment, I agreed. "Okay," I said quietly. "If it'll make you feel better, we'll do the test." The decision that changed everything. We didn't tell anyone about the paternity test at first. I didn't want my family to know, and I definitely didn't want Sarah's family to find out. It felt like something that could cause unnecessary drama if people misunderstood the situation. We were just doing it for peace of mind, that's all. The day we went to the clinic for the test, I remember feeling uneasy. It felt strange to be questioning something so fundamental. We had to fill out paperwork, take a swab from the baby's mouth, and give our own samples. The whole thing took less than an hour, but it left a knot in my stomach that stayed with me for days afterward. We waited anxiously for the results. Every day felt longer than the last. I started to regret agreeing to the test in the first place. It wasn't just about proving the baby was mine anymore. It felt like this test had opened the door to all sorts of doubts and fears that we hadn't faced before. What if the test came back with a mistake? What if this caused more problems than it solved? I didn't know it yet, but those fears would soon become reality. When the results came in. After a week, the results finally came in. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with Sarah when she opened the email. I could see her hand trembling as she clicked on the message. I was nervous too, but I kept telling myself that it would be fine, that the results would confirm what we already knew, that I was the father of our baby, and we could move on from this. But when Sarah's face fell, I knew something was wrong. "What does it say?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't respond at first. She just stared at the screen, her face pale, her eyes wide with shock. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. I reached over and took her phone to read the results for myself. The words on the screen hit me like a punch to the gut. "The test results are inconclusive." Inconclusive? What did that even mean? I had expected a clear answer, one way or the other, but instead we were left with even more questions. I quickly read through the explanation, which said that there had been a problem with the sample. Something had gone wrong, and the lab couldn't provide a definitive result. They offered to retake the test for free, but we would have to wait another week or two for the new results. I couldn't believe it. After all the anxiety and all the sleepless nights, we were right back where we started. I looked over at Sarah, who was staring blankly at the wall, and I could see the disappointment and confusion in her eyes. "What do we do now?" she whispered. I didn't know how to answer her. All I knew was that this whole situation had gone from bad to worse, and I wasn't sure how we were going to fix it. The whispering begins. As much as we had tried to keep the paternity test between us, word eventually got out. I'm still not sure how it happened. Maybe Sarah confided in someone, or maybe a relative overheard us talking. But before we knew it, people were asking questions, and not just casual, innocent questions. These were questions laced with suspicion and doubt. Why are you guys doing a paternity test? My sister asked me one day when we were having lunch. I was caught off guard by the question. I hadn't told anyone in my family about the test, but somehow she knew. It's nothing, I said quickly, just a formality. But she didn't let it go. A formality? What does that mean? Why would you need a test if there wasn't some kind of issue? I tried to brush it off, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. And once my sister started asking questions, it wasn't long before the rest of my family got involved. It's amazing how quickly a simple misunderstanding can spread like wildfire. Soon my parents called me, asking why we were taking the test. My cousins were texting me, wondering if there was something going on that they should know about. Even my friends started to hear about it, and before I knew it, I was fielding questions from all sides. Each conversation felt like another layer of pressure being piled onto me. It wasn't just about the test anymore. It was about my integrity, my relationship with Sarah, and even my character. People started to assume that something must have gone wrong in our relationship, that there was some reason we needed to do a paternity test in the first place. And no matter how hard I tried to explain, it seemed like no one believed me. You don't just do a paternity test for no reason, my mother said sternly one day over the phone. There's obviously something going on. I was getting frustrated. Mom, it's just a mistake. The first test came back inconclusive, so we have to do it again. That's all. But she didn't sound convinced. Well, I don't know, son. It seems strange to me. Why would Sarah even ask for a test in the first place? Are you sure everything's okay between you two? The worst part was that I didn't even know how to answer that question anymore. I had been so certain that everything was fine before all of this happened, but now I wasn't so sure. Family fallout. As the days went on, the situation only got worse. My family's doubts seemed to grow by the day, and it didn't take long for Sarah's family to get involved too. They were just as confused as mine, and soon we were caught in the middle of a full-blown family drama. What had started as a simple test for peace of mind had turned into something much bigger, a test of trust, loyalty, and relationships. And I was starting to feel like I was failing. My father, who had always been supportive, started acting distant. He didn't come out and say it, but I could tell that he was starting to have doubts too. It was like a cloud of suspicion had settled over our family, and no one was willing to clear the air. Do you really think the baby's yours? My brother asked me one day when we were alone. I was stunned. What? Of course the baby's mine. Why would you even ask that? He shrugged. I don't know. It's just, this whole situation seems weird. I mean, why would Sarah even want a test if there wasn't a reason? I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to defend Sarah, to tell him that everything was fine, but deep down, I was starting to have my own doubts. Not about the baby, but about the way this whole thing was affecting our relationship. I could feel the tension between Sarah and me growing with each passing day. We hardly talked anymore, and when we did, it was always about the test. It was like the joy and love that had once filled our home had been replaced by stress, anxiety, and fear. The final straw came one night during the family dinner. We had gathered at my parents' house for a birthday celebration, but the mood was far from celebratory. As soon as we sat down to eat, I could feel the tension in the air. Everyone was quiet, and it didn't take long for the conversation to turn to the test. So what's the deal with the paternity test? My father asked, breaking the silence. I froze. I hadn't expected him to bring it up in front of everyone. I could feel all eyes on me, waiting for my response. The first test was inconclusive, I said slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. We're doing another one, but we have to wait for the results. My father frowned. Inconclusive? What does that mean? It means there was a mistake with the sample, I explained, feeling the frustration building inside me. We'll get the results soon. But my father didn't seem satisfied with that answer. He leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms, looking at me with a mixture of disappointment and suspicion. "Well, I hope for your sake the results come back the way you want them to," he said quietly. The words hung in the air like a heavy weight, and I felt my stomach drop. I knew what he was implying. He was questioning whether the baby was really mine, just like everyone else. And in that moment, I realized that things had gone too far. The breaking point. The next few days were some of the hardest I've ever experienced. My family, who had always been my biggest source of support, was now a source of stress and doubt. Sarah and I were barely speaking, and I could feel our relationship unraveling before my eyes. I didn't know how to fix it. Every time I tried to talk to Sarah about how I was feeling, it ended in an argument. She felt like I wasn't supporting her, and I felt like she had opened a Pandora's box by asking for the test in the first place. It was a mess, and I didn't know how to make things right. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the results of the second test came in. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with Sarah, just like before, as she opened the email. This time, I was too scared to read it myself. I watched as she scanned the message, her face unreadable. "What does it say?" I asked, my voice trembling. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears. "You're the father," she whispered. For a moment, I felt a rush of relief wash over me. The test confirmed what I had known all along. The baby was mine, but that relief was quickly overshadowed by the reality of what had happened. The damage had already been done. Aftermath. In the days and weeks that followed, things slowly started to return to normal, or as normal as they could be after everything that had happened. My family, now reassured by the test results, started treating me with the same warmth and support they had before. They apologized for doubting me, but the trust that had once been so strong between us had been shaken. Sarah and I worked hard to rebuild our relationship, but it wasn't easy. The test had revealed cracks in our relationship that we hadn't even realized were there. We went to counseling, and over time, we were able to work through the issues that the test had brought to the surface. But the experience had left scars that I wasn't sure would ever fully heal. Looking back now, I realized that the paternity test was never really about the baby. It was about trust, trust between Sarah and me, trust within our families, and trust in ourselves. The test had opened up a Pandora's box of doubt and fear that we weren't prepared to handle. And while the results had confirmed what I had always known, the journey to get there had changed everything. Conclusion. If there's one thing I've learned from this experience, it's that trust is fragile. It can be broken in an instant, and once it's gone, it's incredibly hard to rebuild. The paternity test had exposed the cracks in our relationships, cracks that had been there all along, but had never been addressed. In the end, the test wasn't about the baby's paternity. It was about the fears and insecurities that we all carry with us. It was about the way we handled doubt and how quickly we let it take root in our lives. And while we were able to rebuild our relationships, I'll never forget the pain and heartache that came with it. Call to action. Have you ever experienced something that made you question your trust in the people you love? Or maybe you've been in a situation where something small spiraled out of control and caused more problems than you expected. If so, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Trust me, you're not alone in feeling like life can get messy in the blink of an eye. And if you're interested in hearing more real-life stories about family and relationships, make sure to check out my next video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more.